The typical high performing man, that elite entrepreneur wants more scale in life. He wants more profit out of his business. He wants more freedom with the way he's living his life. He wants to be smarter, wiser, sharper. He wants that edge. You can have all of that. That's all possible, all while having a strong, solid foundation of an identity. You can have an amazing marriage where you have mutual respect with your wife, mutual sacrifice and service, lots of sex. You can have great relationships with your kids where you're present. You can have real friendship, deep brotherhood and community. All those things are truly possible. How does that begin for this type of guy that is nailing it maybe in an area or two?
We have to be brave enough to tell the truth to ourselves and then hopefully tell the truth to somebody else about what isn't really working and where do you want to go? Because once you're honest about it, it's like that cliche is that we can't change what we won't confront. And so we have to be honest because the honesty is the gateway to making the change.
One of the things that we have been talking about quite a bit is this guy, this known and yet unknown avatar, Quentin, that me and you both interact with. We serve, we try to serve. We've called him some sort of elite entrepreneur. I call him a man of greatness. You've called him a higher level man. But when you think about that guy, this guy that we want to be around, that we are attracted to, that are attracted to us, like what are some of the key things that really stand out to you about who that guy is?
Yeah, great question, man. I think that the reason you and I like working with that kind of a guy is because you and I are both that guy. And so I think there's a ton of relatability to the personality type, the drive, the ambition, the creator, the part of that entrepreneur that you and I both have where, we're the kind of people that we don't, we never settle, we're never satisfied with the status quo. We never really feel like we have arrived. We never really feel like we're doing enough. And so we love talking to that guy. We love helping that guy because I think something that you and I have figured out along the road, along our own journeys, is that there's there is a peril that awaits that guy if he doesn't figure out some really important things. And hopefully he figures them out earlier than later. But this idea that the entrepreneurial journey can be so taxing on someone's personal life. And I think you and I have figured some of those pieces out. And so we just love sharing that information with these guys to say, hey, kind of like warning sign, you and I were the same people. We're go-getters, we're driven, we're ambitious. But if you are not careful and if you're not watching out for these bright neon blinking signs, something bad is going to happen. And we just want to help you not fall off the cliff. That's kind of how I see it. I don't know if that resonates with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that first of all, yes, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we've been friends for quite a few years now. We've pushed each other really, really hard. And so, we are there, we've been there. I think one of the things though, as we start into this, and we've had this conversation a lot, which is why I think it's so powerful for other people to hear, is I think that a lot of times when we're trying to communicate a desire to help, or even when we're communicating ourselves, about ourselves, I think that there's this fear that starts to kind of seep into to the listener, to the viewer, whatever, that they're broken. And I mean, I guess we can argue that we all are to some degree, but this guy is not necessarily that, at least at face value, right? Because I mean, you hosted an incredibly successful event. It's been a couple of months now. We did live down in South Orange County, some top level guys there. And that was my first time into that was your environment. Those were your clients, colleagues, friends of yours that you brought in from around. And I was really impressed by the fact that, I mean, pretty much everybody that I interacted with, they had done some really cool shit. Like they had been successful or they were successful, like in present moment, earning 6, 7, maybe even 8 figures. Like I didn't get into anybody's bank account. So they're sitting not even in the top 5%, but they're probably sitting some of those guys in the top 1% of earners, even in a state like California, which is that's really successful. They've built, maybe even exited successful businesses. They're on business number 2 or 3. They're just wired. I mean, there was a group of guys, I know this is big for you. They're jujitsu guys, you know, so there's discipline there. I know for me, like it's a lot of my CrossFit community. Like these are not guys that are pieces of shit. I think is one of the things that, that we talk about a lot, and it's really hard for us to convey that because at face value, when we're having this conversation, we start talking about how we want to help and how we want people to grow. And I'm talking a lot about my own broken and jacked up past. And so there's kind of this arm's length that gets put at times because the guy that's listening, he, again, the top 1% Orange County dude, he's super successful. He's like, F you. I'm good. Like, I look at all the things that I've done. My wife is hot. I've got a couple of kids that, at least again, at level set, they respect me. Um, and so that's also right a big part of who that guy, like you run into those guys all the time. Imagine, like, what do you say to a guy that's earning 7 figures a year? He's in pretty good physical shape, like his wife is good looking. Like, how do you go to that guy and you're like, dude, you're just a whole big piece of shit, like you need to fix yourself? You know?
Yeah. Well, okay. So, dude, you're bringing up such a great point. You're bringing up such a great point. Okay. So, a couple things that I'll just say right off the bat. And I love how you and I are just having a candid conversation. Like, I don't care if this gets published or not published, but I think what feels so important for this is for you and I to be really honest. Okay. So, for me being really honest, if a guy is worth 8 figures, 9 figures, has a hot wife, it doesn't fucking mean anything to me and I'm not impressed. Okay. And so I don't fucking care. And because you could have 9 figures sitting in the bank account and have a hot wife and be a total fucking loser, as far as I'm concerned. So I just want to say that very
Well,
clearly.
let me interject.
Yeah,
Like,
go ahead.
and I want to be able to do this. And by the way, like, we're not here just to talk. I think that we're going to have some really good practical, kind of guidance and advice that people pay us a lot of money to share with them that we're going to offer as we continue down this path in this specific conversation today. So people sit in. This is not just us like talking that, but okay. I think that we should be really honest about this. You said, in your opinion, and I guess, we all have it is our opinion, but I think that it would be really hard to argue for some guy that's a total asshole to his wife, that it has some secret addiction, that is just a broken mess, that just because they make money or in good physical shape, that all of a sudden erases or negates the fact that they're a piece of shit. And I think that is one thing that a lot of people are afraid to say. They're like, no, 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 no. You're a pretty good guy, but I'm like, no, no. And as a matter of fact, like those 2 metrics really are kind of the easiest ones to get after anyway, right?
Well, those are the metrics that our culture, I think, really values more than anything,
Yeah.
and so in my little world, the way I talk about it in the event that you kind of came to, it's kind of like there's low value men and high value men. And so, um, I think about men on a bell curve, there's a small percentage of men that are just really horrible men. Okay, they're the kind of sociopathic men that are going to end up in jail. There is the majority of men who are the middle of the bell curve, and frankly, they're just very mediocre men. And then there's elite men who are on the right side of the bell curve who are going to be very elite men. So then it's really like, well, what makes really an elite man? Having financial resources does not make you an elite man. And having a hot wife does not make you an elite man. Being in great physical health does not make you an elite man by themselves. Now, that's just by themselves. So you could have all of those things and you could be a super high value guy or you could be a very low value guy. It really depends on your character and who you are as a person. But it's important to acknowledge that because in our culture, we tend to put men that are wealthy on a pedestal of kind of elite status that, other low value men might put you on that elite status, but high value men do not put you on that elite status. And it's really important to understand that as you walk through the world, and if you feel like, oh, I'm somebody special because I have wealth, the only people that think that are other low value men. High value men are going to need to really understand who you are as a person before they're going to kind of award you that kind of a respect. And so, you know, so going back to the premise that I was just saying, like it doesn't really matter to me if somebody's rich. It doesn't matter to me if somebody, has an excess of wealth. I care more about certain character attributes and who you are as a person. And you can have those character attributes whether you have wealth or whether you don't have wealth. The reason we like talking to high performing guys is because high performing guys are so close to embodying the fullness of what it means to be really elite because typically they're disciplined, they're hardworking, they have drive and they have ambition. And so it's like, but what we see is that all of that drive and ambition, and I know you kind of get this with all the guys you work with too, it has a way of compensating for other elements of their life that are it's really typically it's just a matter of time before that other element of their life falls apart that ends up eroding all of their performance and all of their achievement that they work so hard to get to. So we're trying to speak to those guys. We're trying to say, hey guys, you're so close to having it so dialed in. If you just made these small tweaks and small adjustments, you are going to be on a rocket ship to the moon and you're going to be absolutely unstoppable. All it takes, and this is addressing the thing that you said, because a lot of guys are like, I'm not broken. And it's like, no, you're not broken at all. Of course not. But do you know of a professional athlete at a really high level who doesn't have a coach who's giving them feedback? Do you know of a CEO of any Fortune 500 company that doesn't have it, that's not being coached? So it's not to say that you're broken. It's to say that you're super close to being elite. And so we just want to coach you into that space so you can win. That's all we care about.
Yeah, no, dude, when when you were talking about, man, you're like, you're on this track. But on one hand, I think that you are one good decision away from just being fully dialed in, absolutely crushing it. At the same time, and you said this too, like you are also one decision away from destroying everything completely. And that was me. I mean, I woke up in a hotel room, August 10th, I think it was, 2006. And at that time, I was 28 years old. I'd been married for 5 years. I had one daughter. I was making six figures, which that was a ton of money back in 2006. And I felt like I was killing it. My wife's driving a Mercedes. I was driving a bomb truck. We had a house in Orange County. And I woke up in the morning after nearly cheating on my wife, and I felt like a hollow shell of a human being. It was like all the things that I thought were going to prove my dad wrong, that were going to show everybody else how badass I was, they set me up for absolute failure because they were masking this deeper need that I had. And I didn't even realize it until I finally came to the end of almost throwing away. At that point in my life, I hadn't had a relationship with God yet. So the most important relationship I had was with my wife. And I was on the verge of absolutely destroying that. And it was like, oh my God, none of this shit matters at all. Like I got all that stuff and none of it mattered. And the one thing that mattered the most to me, I was on the verge of losing. And I feel like, that so many men that they chase more money. We see, scaling your business, scaling your life. I don't know, all this shit that I see that's like thrown at and pitched at guys as a way to solve like this inner issue that's happening, and it doesn't work. Like well, I should say that that's not true. It works perfectly for
in the
the person
short
that's
run.
selling it. Well,
Oh, yeah,
for the
okay,
person
yeah,
that's selling it,
that's
right?
true,
Like,
yeah, good,
I mean,
yeah.
think about it. It's like it gets you to get sucked right in. It gets you to buy exactly what they're selling you, and before long, you need more of it and you need more of it. It's just like I've never been addicted to a hardcore drug, but it's like, hey, just a little bump. And before long, you're like a frequent subscriber having Amazon Prime deliver Coke to your door because you need it every 3 seconds. It's just like it's never enough. You need more adrenaline, you need more money, you need more, 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 more. And eventually, like you will burn yourself out and break yourself down trying to fulfill that. And it's so empty.
I think it's even more applicable too in Orange County, where, there's such an abundance of wealth and everybody is subtly competing with each other and comparing against each other. And so it really does, I know this is a phenomenon that is universal. It does exist everywhere to a certain extent because it's our sinful nature as humans, but it's especially loud in Orange County where you might be I can relate to this too because it's like I just came back from Nashville and it's so different in Nashville, where just from a the community is just so different, nobody cares about nobody cares really what car you drive or where you live or what your house looks like, and then kind of thrust it back into Orange County, and it's like it's a competition to see, whose house could, get more closely matched to, HGTV, and it's just like, dude, it's exhausting. It's a lot of work. But you bring up a really good point, Ryan, and I think that this is also because you're asking the question, why do we love working with these guys? Is because you know, we we see that the psychology of a high performer is really unique. It's not the same as the psychology of somebody who works at Starbucks or, is working for $20 an hour. People that are really trying to make something of themselves, and this is not a truism like that it's all the time, but it's very common that people that are really ambitious, trying to make something of themselves, they are kind of running from something to a certain extent. Now, this is very unpopular. Guys don't want to talk about this. They don't want to admit this. Um, but you and I have seen it enough to really understand that the world of high performance, because it is so glorified in our culture, it gives guys a certain permission slip to chase and to pursue and to run towards something, which is often them running away from something. And that's why there is this crazy phenomenon in the world of high performance where we see these guys just crash and burn all day long, all the time. I mean, there's so many stories that we could talk about where, guys had this incredible thing going, or they were a professional athlete, or they were a pastor at this big church, or whatever high performance world they were part of. They ended up, torpedoing their whole lives because of, like you said, one bad decision. And so that phenomenon, it doesn't really exist with people that work at Starbucks. Now, it's not to say that
Mhm.
people that work at Starbucks aren't gonna make bad decisions in life, because of course we're all gonna make some bad decisions, but there's a certain high stakes game that high performers play. It's a little bit of gambling with their life to a certain extent, and I think you and I have been in those conversations so much in our work and throughout our lives that we just feel this calling, this responsibility to go and talk to these people and say, guys, like, we see the road ahead. We know exactly where you're going to go. And if we could do anything to, you know, steer you off of that self destructive path, that's what we want to do. I don't know. Does that resonate with you? Does that seem right to you?
Yeah. No, I mean, when you were talking about that, I mean, you know, setting myself aside for a second. So, I don't know if I've told you this, but so I was friends with this guy, had been, for gosh, 10 years now at least. And when we first became friends, so he lives here in Orange County, and he grew up working for his dad. His dad was very successful, and my friend was a really hard worker, super hard worker. And I can't divulge too much information because there will be people that probably hear this that will then put two and two together. So I'm gonna have to be a little bit general here. He's working for his dad. His dad's like, you are my guy. Like, when I decide to retire from the business, it's going to be for you. And my friend had earned it. It wasn't because of his last name. It was because of his work ethic. Like, dude, he was busting his ass. He was sacrificing his family, like all these things. His dad was a dick, total dick the whole time. And so he was always trying to prove to his dad that he was a hard worker, that he did a good job, blah, blah, whatever. Anyway, so all of a sudden, after he had sacrificed so much, his dad hires in some other guy to basically run the business. And my buddy was like, what the fuck? You know? And so after a series of conversations, my buddy's like, all right, you know what? I got to go. I'm going to have to go work somewhere else because I got to go do my thing on my own. Like, you're going to hold me back. I'm going to go. His dad looks him in the face and tells him, you will never amount to anything. You will never be successful without me. That's the backstory. So my friend sets off on this warpath to go do it himself, builds a business in the same industry, ends up actually becoming successful. As he's becoming successful, I start to see the same tendencies in him that he was complaining about with his dad, needing to show everybody how much money he had, throwing money around, basically buying friendships, but, bought a Lambo and, brand new house and had to be the title sponsor on everything, like all of this. And dude, like, and we were close, but he would only let me in so much. When I would push too far, it was like he would just shut down. And so he denied that he was turning into his dad. Anyway, long story short, he is now, from what I've heard, we're no longer friends, um, on the verge of that business going away completely. And it was all because he lived with this vendetta that then turned into a need to fuel this monster to look a certain way, not just for his dad, but now for all these other people that he had propped himself up in front of. And I just feel like, and you alluded to some of this stuff, he was carrying all of that himself. I can do it. This is the one of the other problems with like this high performer, this elite entrepreneur, is men like this tend to believe that I can just put my head down and keep going. I can run through the wall. I can do this. I. They end up being crushed by their own belief that they can self-sustain as they continue to grow. And I just feel like that becomes one of their greatest enemies. And again, culture feeds into this because culture is like, from the elite male marketing message, it's like, you are the man and you can do anything you set your mind to. And you. And so then they just get this like self-identified, like, I'm everything I need. and it ends up just crushing them as they're fighting all these demons. So anyway, so that resonates so much with me because again, like I've seen it in friends, I've seen it in clients. It was me, and if I'm not careful, I fall back into that myself, which is why it requires us to be so close, us to be in masterminds or have a coach, because we're gonna do the same shit because it's just fed to us so often.
Dude, such a perfect illustration of what happens and how it comes from these relationships that matter so much to us. I could tell you a bunch of stories of professional athletes that I've worked with that have the same experience, where they became a professional athlete to try to win the favor or approval of a parent, only to realize that they made it to the very, very, very top of the food chain in the NFL, in the major leagues, whatever. And they hate it. They hate every minute of it. They hate their life. They don't even like to play this stupid game, but now they have golden handcuffs and they can't get out and their body is getting wrecked and all, so on. As you go back to the root cause, you're just like, oh yeah, man, like this whole time, you have been chasing this ghost that's been kind of haunting you and you were never able to really run away from it. So guys, we're talking mostly to guys in this conversation right now. Guys do the same exact thing in business. But let's go back to something that you said too, because I think this is an important point that I feel like we should really spend a lot of time on is like this aversion that high performing guys have to getting, I don't even know, I want to say the word help because that sounds like not the right language, but this aversion to like even even a subtle insinuation. I'll give you a perfect example. So you came to the High Value Man event in May, and I invited most of my male clients to that event. There was one guy that I invited in particular, and he didn't come. And so in the aftermath of it, I just was, we were talking. I was like, "Oh man, you missed a great event. There was like 20 guys. It was super powerful." And he's like, "Well, I'm already a high value guy. I don't need to come to that event."
Sorry, just
Yeah. And I was like, "Well, I said, dude, I said, yeah, I said, you are a high value guy." And I said, the assumption in the event wasn't you're a low value guy, come learn how to be a high value guy. The assumption in the event was these are high value guys, come to this event. Like we want to surround each other with high value guys. But he couldn't read between the lines of what the event was. And so he assumed that what I was saying is that you need to come to this event because you're a low value guy. And which is really just a loss to him, because he missed
Mhm.
out on this incredible day and this incredible opportunity. But then it goes into this other like thought about like, well, how much else does he miss out on in life because he has this really kind of this prideful aversion to even like getting close to the edges of like, well, maybe there's somebody that can help you. Maybe there's somebody that can show you a better way. I mean, what when you run into this is a question for you. I'm really curious. When you run into this, like maybe introductory calls you're having with people, or maybe you're working with somebody for some time and like there's a new area of growth that you need to expand them into, and you run into this kind of bristling of like, I'm not broken. I don't need to change. I'm good. What are you talking about? How have you learned to address that with them so you can make them more successful?
It's $1 million question, dude. Um, I mean, I guess for the ones that have worked out well, it's about being brutally honest about my own struggles, but not my past ones, but my present ones. Because I think that like there's this, it's so easy, even though it's still embarrassing, it's easy to talk about the fact that 20 years, 19 years ago, I nearly blew it with my wife because it's been so long and I've recovered and I'm at the top of the marriage mountain right now with my wife. That's easy. And so I think that there's just such a distance there that people don't really like lean into that. But when I talk to them about real struggles in the moment, and just relate to one another. Like that's why we get along so well, you and I, is we're constantly challenged with some aspect of life. And again, it's not that we're melting down. It could just be we just need to get a little bit better in an area, or we're really that's one thing that I try and do. But there's something else that that comes to mind for me. This is what I was going to say first, but I wanted to be a little bit nicer to start. Is I'm done giving the time of day to pussies that aren't willing to admit that they're struggling.
Let's
Like
go.
honestly, like
Let's
I
go.
think that there is no bigger bitch of a man than a man that is not willing to admit that he is struggling. Like we have it's fascinating to me how we live in a society today that talks about failure and that it's okay to fail and blah blah blah, blah, which is its own level of bullshit sometimes. But I just don't understand how we can have that at the same time that we have all of these guys that pretend like they have all their shit together. And so if you're not willing to admit to me that you're not having sex with your wife as much as you would like to, or your kids are frustrated because you're not around, or your co-founder isn't happy with the way you're doing something, or you're not growing your business at the rate that you would like, whatever it is. Like if you are not willing to admit that, I don't want to give you the space anymore. Like I was starting a community here in North Orange County, and I was getting some guys to get together, and we were like 9 months in, and I finally just shut it down. I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm over chasing you around. Now, when I would chase them down, they were receptive, but I'm like, I'm not going to babysit you into fixing yourself or to growing. Like if you're not willing to admit you struggle and you aren't willing to constantly reach out for help, then I'm over it. I'm so over it. There and so I don't know, I feel like yeah, it really frustrates me. I just tell them like it is. Again, I want to be kind, I want to be considerate, but at some point I'm like, dude, if you just aren't man enough to admit that you struggle, then I don't want to have anything to do with you.
Dude, that's beautiful, man. I think that there is something so awesome that you're kind of holding that standard for yourself and for them. That's kind of the line in the sand for you. Um, I just I resonate with that so much. It kind of reminds me of what I was saying earlier about like it's the same feeling and principle that, you know, it's like your money doesn't mean anything to me, man. You know, like I don't know like who needs to tell you that, you know, you can go to Nobu and flash it around like you're somebody special, but in my world, it means jack shit, you know? So I love you when I say that. I'm not saying that in a disparaging way, but it's that same energy. And it kind of reminds me of this like just about a month ago, somebody got referred to me to work with me. So they came through my website, ended up doing like a discovery call with them. I got on the discovery call with this guy and I was like, so like, yeah, man, like, so what's going on? Or why'd you reach out to me? And, you know, and he was like so vague and unwilling to talk about why he even reached out to me that I literally said to him, I was like, dude, you know how this works, right? Like you reached out to me because maybe you thought I can help you, but you're not telling me how you need help or what I can do for you. So I'm not sure what to say. And he just kind of kept being vague and kept being vague. And then, like, you know, not even probably more than 5 minutes into the conversation, I just said, dude, I don't know that I can really help you because I still don't know why that you reached out to me. And it kind of just reminds me of that same energy of like, what the fuck did you reach out to me for? You know, like,
Right.
why are you talking? Why do you waste my fucking time right now? Like, seriously, this is a waste of my fucking time. It's a waste of your time too, by the way. Like, what are we doing here together? And it all goes back to that thing that you kind of mentioned earlier about this little boy. Dude, this is just little boy energy. It's little
Yeah.
boy energy of like, I don't want to admit that I smoked the cigarette because I don't want dad to get mad at me. So, like, I'm going to give all these kind of placating, minimization, deflection, half truths, lying by omission, all this bullshit because I'm just really terrified that I'm going to get in trouble or that I don't know. I don't even want to go into like the why in it because the rabbit hole is deep. but it's like, guys, we're all human. We all struggle. We all screw up. We all fail. We're all struggling. We're all just trying to do our best. And like, it's okay. It literally is okay. You're going to be okay. But this, this armor that guys wear, where they just like, they cannot be revelatory of like, oh, I'm struggling in this area or I need assistance in this area. Um, you
Well,
know,
okay, so we were
yeah, go
talking
ahead.
about
Yeah.
this recently. I think that we got to play golf together not too long ago, and we were chatting about some of this. I think that one of the things that really differentiates this guy from the normal guy is in it, like, I think the elite guy is far above average. Um, like the regular everyday guy, they're willing to admit they're broken because they're out of options, right? It's like everything is kind of falling apart. Marriage is messed up, work sucks, they're physically not in good shape, emotionally they're stressed out and distressed, and so it's like, dude, I got nowhere to turn. I got nothing. Like, this is it for me. I think the big problem with this arena of elite level higher value is their identity has become chained to the professional success and the personal prowess that they have achieved. So it's like, how could they ever see themselves as struggling, as a husband, let's just say, when their business is in the top tier of those in their industry? I see this all the time, dude, in my CrossFit gym. I do not understand how there are so many guys in there that are in ridiculous shape, crushing it physically, and they're pieces of shit to their spouse. It doesn't compute for me. But I think, again, a big part of it is because they are like, well, look at me. I'm strong. I'm tough. I'm a man's man. And so I'm not even going to talk about or admit to the fact that my marriage is a mess. Or I'm not going to admit the fact that when I go home, I feel all alone and I'm depressed and I got nowhere to turn. Like, all my friendships are fake. And so I just think that it's like they're handcuffed to that identity of elite, handcuffed to that identity of success. And so they feel like it's like off brand for them to admit that there's some struggle there, and so they would rather just continue to suffer and or medicate it with whatever they think is going to fix their problem.
Yeah, I never thought about that from like a physical health standpoint, but I can totally see what you're saying now too, that like if somebody is really in great physical shape, they could really cling to that from an identity standpoint. And so that makes sense. And then, with dude, you are hitting the nail right on the head too, because these elite entrepreneurs, the guys that we like to work with, it's like we have to go biblical for a second too, because it's like, it's not coincidental that Jesus talks about money more than any other topic. He's always talking about money because what he understood and what we all understand too is that wealth becomes an idol of its in and of itself, and when we have lots of financial resources, when we have lots of materialism, well, we don't have to need anything else. We certainly don't need God, because we can kind of solve all of our own problems with money until we realize that it doesn't solve the most important problem. And we don't really need to be a better husband because after all, everybody thinks that I'm, pretty incredible. I have all these things and I take people out and I'm doing all this stuff and look at me and where I live. And so the the high performer that's doing well, that's financially successful, it's so easy to glob onto that from an identity standpoint, and then you become like what I like to call, it's like you just become this really one trick pony, and you're a one trick pony. You know how to go work, you know how to go make money. And if that was a successful way of living, dude, I would high five you and applaud you all the way to the finish line. But what I know and what you know, because we're in this world all day with these kinds of people, is that eventually they're going to hit the end of the runway. And they're going to realize that the things that matter most to them, the things that they really need, money can't solve.
Mhm.
And it's a great awakening for guys when they come to that place. Sadly, they often come to that place when they've lost everything and there isn't really a recovery process. What we like to do, I think I'll speak for you because we've talked about it. We like meeting those guys before it gets to that place because we don't have
Mhm.
anything wrong with financial abundance. We want guys to get rich. We want guys to make a ton of money. We just want them to do it in such a way that it 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 complements other aspects of their life too, that there isn't this pursuit of money or business growth or scaling or entrepreneurship at the cost of or at the expense of other things that are equally important. And that's the thing. We're just trying to get in front of guys at that place. Is that, I mean, that's what you
Yeah.
do. That's what I'm doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said this recently, and I thought this was so good. It's like rescuing somebody from the pit of hell, or, in the case, I think in the context of our conversation was like when the wife has already come to the husband and said, I want a divorce. Here's the papers. It's really hard to unwind that. Like you can help that guy in his next relationship, but it's probably not saving that one, right? Like that's just like too far gone in most circumstances. And praise God when it's not. But I think that being able to help a man, this is like I'd rather work with Mike Trout and I don't know, Johnny High School. It's like he's already there. Like what an incredible opportunity to take Mike Trout and just make him 1% better. And the kind of contribution that he would have to his team and to his brand and to his family. Like that's what I think it is. It's like, is Mike Trout broken? I mean, maybe a little bit physically at the moment, but no, he's in an incredible place. But that's the whole point. It's like, take that and maximize that potential in marketing. When you are in business as an entrepreneur and you find a marketing methodology, a system, a platform, a message that works, you will pour as much gasoline on that fire as humanly possible. I hear Alex Hormozy talk about this all the time. It's like, if I can get $100 for every $10, if I can, get to the point where I can get $100 return for every $10 I spend, I'll spend $1 million because I can get 10 million in return. Like it's a guarantee. And so I wish more guys would realize that again, yeah, you probably are broken, but this isn't about the brokenness. It's about trying to make you as effective as humanly possible in every aspect of life. Because I would love to hear you talk about this. It's like you've probably tapped out your ability to hit it hard in the gym and hit it hard at work. And yet you want to continue to get physically, mentally, emotionally stronger, and you want to continue to grow your business. So don't you agree that that's just more evidence for someone to dive further into their personal life to become better there because that's only going to exponentially grow those other things anyway?
That's the thing that we need to do a good job illuminating for these high performers is that because what a lot of high performers wrongfully think is that to focus on these other aspects of their life is going to cost them something about their business or their level of performance. When in fact, it does the opposite. It feels like it's in competition with high performance, but it's complementary to high performance. And I don't know about you, but I can speak for myself. Like when my wife and I are in a bad place, if we get into an argument, dude, I'm like the worst coach in the world. I'm not present. I'm distracted. I'm thinking about what I need to say to her. I'm thinking about like how long is this going to go on for? Like I am not effective. Okay. So that exists for all of us, right? So if these other areas, the same thing, if we could take physical health for an example, this is why I love talking to guys about just the physical health journey too, because I know that if I'm not eating well, if I'm not prioritizing my body, I'm the worst coach in the world. I'm sluggish. I'm foggy minded. I don't have a lot of energy. And so we could use those two little simple basic examples to show how there's these other aspects of life that have to get addressed in order for your high performance to really skyrocket. The only thing that ever gets in the way of it is pride. Okay, it's just pride and ego. It's little boyish pride and ego that says, "I don't need any help." I have a 12-year-old son and I love him so much, but he's in that stage of life right now where he's like doesn't want daddy's help. He wants to do it on his own. God bless him. That's exactly where he's supposed to be developmentally. Eventually, though, I'm going to want him to grow out of that. And I'm going to want him to understand that asking for help is very important and that it's actually the greatest sign of wisdom and strength in a man to be able to ask for help, but he's not there yet. And so when we see, 40-year-old entrepreneurs doing the same thing as my 12-year-old son, we were kind of like, hey, this is a little bit of a problem. You don't want to do that. Also, let me just say this last point and I'll be quiet. It's like, I think we have to understand what you and I do. And I just feel compelled to say this probably because I am technically a therapist, that there's a very big difference between therapy and coaching and the kind of coaching that we like to do. So therapy, the basic premise of therapy is that, yeah, there is something wrong with you and you need to go see a therapist to find healing. Okay. So therapy is about healing. And the kind of coaching that we like to do with high performers isn't about healing. It's about taking them to greater levels of aspiration. So it's not about looking in the past and saying, oh gosh, there's all these things wrong with you. Now, there might be a certain element of that to get them to more aspirational levels, but it's really about saying, hey, what would it look like to fire on all cylinders? Like
Uh-huh.
to be, an exemplary person that people looked up to in all, not just in your business, not because people have to because you write their paychecks, but you're inside your community, inside your home, inside your friendships. What would it look like to be that kind of a person? So let's talk about the ask. What would it look like to make more money? Because again, like we said, we're not anti making money. We want to help guys do that. We just want to help them do it in a way that puts all the pieces in their proper places. And so I think a lot of guys have this natural aversion because I think that there's this confusion about like therapy. At least this shows, I don't know if it shows up in your world, Ryan, but it shows up a lot in my world because people do know that I'm a therapist and they're kind of like, oh, I don't want therapy. It's like, okay, cool. I don't want therapy either. And I don't want therapy for you either. I want something very different for you, something even more powerful than therapy. But I don't know, because you're not a therapist. I don't know if do you get some of that? Like people not understanding what this really is?
Yeah, a little bit. The more interesting ones I actually get are that I've got clients that are in therapy and working with me. And I'm only going to say this because we've talked about this. And so I use you as my street cred. But more often than not, dude, I'm like, why the F are you even in therapy? Because it's not solving anything for them. I feel like it's just like the same thing over and over and over again. I'm like, dude, don't you ever want to be over that? Like, don't you ever want to grow from that? Your therapist is just there to handcuff you to that problem. So you keep paying them money to be there. Like, I want you to be better, not the same. So that's what I feel. But yeah, I do get people that question me on occasion, like, oh, is this therapy? I'm like, nope. Like, yes, I think, what you said is really important for me because I wrote a book on this is like, if you have brokenness that's unhealed, you're going to have a real hard time building off of that. It would be like, the Bible says, like building a foundation on sand. It's eventually just going to waste away if you don't have that solid foundation. So I think healing is necessary, but I think that healing is only beneficial if you're going to use it to grow. I think if it's just to like heal, I just don't think that it's very sustaining for most guys. And that's what I think that, that they've heard of before is like, I'm not trying to fix myself, trying to get better. And I'm like, well, you fix yourself to get better, but there's got to be a path forward because that's what they want, right? They want to keep growing. And you're right. Like, make as much money as humanly freaking possible. I wish there was more good guys in this world with way more money. We don't have enough guys in this world with good integrity, high character, moral value, faith in Jesus, and that are making a killing financially and doing good with it. So I want that. Like, that is a huge part of my mission is to help more Christian men make as much money as humanly possible. But if you're a shitbag, then I'm not going to help you get there because all you're going to do is further destroy what you're already destroying.
Mm. Yeah. I remember a mentor told me a long time ago because I told this person that it was my goal to make $1 million in my business, and he said, "Gosh, making $1 million is actually pretty easy." He said, "You know what's really hard is making $1 million and holding on to your integrity." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a harder path, and that's really the only path that I'm interested in. So if I made $1 million and lost my integrity, it's just not worth it for me. If I made $5 and it's like I don't even want to, because that's how I'm wired. I think that's how you're wired too, is that it can't come at the expense of doing the right thing. And dude, I love what you're saying is that the world does need more wealthy guys who are full of integrity, full of the right values, full of honor, full of true change makers in the world. Not making money for the sake of making money and materialism, making money for the sake of like, I want to use my influence and my money, my God-given money-making capacity to do something radically positive in the world. And gosh, dude, if we could create a community of guys like that, I mean, it's just world changing, truly.
Well, and dude, just like imagine this is what we dream about together is could you imagine 100 of those guys getting together on a consistent basis, firing each other up? I mean, that would be insane what a group of guys like that would be capable of together. You know, I think this is one of the things that's so hard, and this is back to like that communal aspect of it, is so much of this just feels like we're on an island, even when it's not self-induced. I mean, some of it is, right? We kind of back ourselves into corners and we hide certain things. But other times, like we just get to this level where we have outpaced those around us. We found some level of success. Maybe from a character perspective, we've separated ourselves. And then we're like, shit, what, where is everybody? And so you start to feel alone, then that can actually create some destruction because or destructive behavior because then you start making decisions in a silo and that can hurt in a lot of different ways. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we continue to have these conversations, why we continue to push each other and trying to figure out ways to draw other men into this conversation is like we want to create that type of momentum and that type of magnitude to affect greater change on that individual man, on their family, on their business, but then I mean, like Orange County, we live in the most beautiful county in the United States. We live in an incredible place. Now we're surrounded by some assholes. um, but like we have this incredible opportunity to affect change in this county, in this area, to do insane things for our state, for our nation. We can lead, we can be that change, but it's going to require men to man up. And not just in the ways of like getting physically stronger and making more money, but having the balls enough to admit their own weakness, to do it the right way, to step up, to put themselves out there, to risk looking like a fool, to not be accepted by everybody, but because they know it's the right thing to do. And I think that the more men that are willing to step up, the more we are going to see that momentum build and see some real good things happen.
Yeah, man. Dude, let's create that. Let's create that. There's such a need. I think about all the different what do we call these? Networking groups, entrepreneur groups, all these ones, EO, Vistage, YPO, yeah, they're all over, right? And it's not to say anything bad about these groups, but like the central orienting principles in these groups are not the things that you and I are talking about. They're kind of like, I don't even know what they are. They're kind of like, pat each other on the back, let's do kind of like a, you know, who's got the biggest dick in the room kind of contest. And I think for the right guy, he's hungry for something more. He wants to be around the right kind of guys that are going to call him up to a higher standard, that he has for himself. He's just not living up to it, and he knows that. And I think that's the energy that you and I are all about, because that's the life that we live. And I just know that there's a bunch of guys out there who want to be around that. So we just got to bring them into our ecosystem.
Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this question, and then maybe like you can provide a couple of helpful tips to somebody going forward. So first of all, I think what we're saying is the typical high performing man, that elite entrepreneur, he wants more scale in life. He wants more profit out of his business. He wants more freedom with the way he's living his life. He wants to be smarter, wiser, sharper, like he wants that edge. And so we're saying you can have all of that. Definitely. Like that's all possible, all while having a strong, solid foundation of an identity. You can have an amazing marriage where you have mutual respect with your wife, mutual sacrifice and service, lots of sex. You can have great relationships with your kids where you're present. You can have real friendship, deep brotherhood and community. So we're saying that like all those things are truly possible. This is not a unicorn. The reality of the matter is if you really put your head down and you get to work on the right things in the right way, this is possible. I think we've both agreed that that's possible. So how does that begin for this type of guy that is nailing it maybe in an area or two, but isn't sure whether or not there's something actually holding him back other than just some random force of nature that's out there in the world?
Well, we know that there's something holding you back. That is just a given in the premise, because nobody has it perfected. And so I talk about this a lot and Go Next Level, that the problem with being in isolation is that you, excuse me, you're only going to show up with your own best thinking. And so we need other people's minds to partner with us and to say, "Oh, did you look at it that way, or did you consider it that way?" Because of course, we're going to just do the best we can on our own. So we need the context of other people to help um, illuminate for us what is really possible. And I can think about that for my own life, that anytime I've ever had kind of a real quantum leap in any aspect of my life, it was because a coach was very much a part of my life at that moment. It was like, "Oh, this is what you need to do." I couldn't see it on my own. So that's number one. And then the other thing too, it's kind of like shift number one in the high value man framework is really just asking the question, will you tell the truth? Will you tell the truth? Will you be honest, first and foremost, with yourself about what isn't working? What lie are you telling yourself? What delusion have you actually come to believe? And the lies can be very subtle, and they are not typically egregious lies. They are half truths. They're statements like, things are good enough, things are okay, things aren't that bad. And that's the most sinister of all the lies, because they are typically, if we're saying that to ourselves, they're typically a lot worse than we really than we're being honest about. And so we have to be brave enough to tell the truth to ourselves, and then hopefully tell the truth to somebody else about what isn't really working and where do you want to go. Because once you're honest about it, it's like that cliche is that we can't change what we won't confront. And so we have to be honest, because the honesty is the gateway to making the change.
That's so good. And I think that that is the perfect entry point for anybody. I wouldn't have said that like that, at least for sure. And yet I think that is the perfect entry point for any man at any point, any stage of their life, their business, is if you aren't willing to be honest with yourself, then you have no choice. I mean, you have no chance. I,
You're
I, I
screwed.
think that is so damn good. And I'm sure maybe somebody's going to have listened to an hour into this conversation and still doesn't believe us, but I doubt there's going to be somebody here listening this far along and hear you say that. But I think this is so incredibly important, is if you aren't willing to be honest, like eventually it's going to come back to blow up in your face. And that could be one or more areas. I mean, I think of, uh, I heard the story about Goggins, that, he's one of those guys where, I have a lot of respect for his hard work, for his upbringing, the way he overcame the things that he did. And I'm going to butcher a little bit of the story, but I heard this time, he was speaking from the stage, and there's thousands and thousands of people in the audience, and his wife, which I think this is his third or his fourth wife, is standing off to the side of the stage. And somebody gets up, and it's during Q&A time, and they ask him something to the effect of like, how do you do it? Like, how do you do this? And he says, like, he goes, this is my number one focus. This is the thing that I do every single day. He turns and he looks at his wife, and he looks at her and he says, even she knows, and he points at her. He says, even she knows that this is my number one and not her. And I was like, bro, first of all, this is why you've been married 3 or 4 times. Secondly, for one of the guys that would be regarded as one of the toughest in this world by human standard, is one of the biggest pussies when it comes to admitting that he is running from the truth somewhere deep inside of himself, and he has masked it in the ways that he does. And so I think that you are just so spot on. Like that is everything. Like we will do anything we can to half truth it, to no truth it, just to hide from the reality of what it's actually going to take to get where we want to go. And then we mask that by doing all this quote unquote hard shit, and justify that, look at, I'm a hard guy because I go out and run 30 miles a day, or look, I'm a hard guy because I've built 4 businesses and exited the last one for 32 million. It's like, dude, all you're doing is masking just how weak you really are.
So good. It's a great story about Goggins. I'm not surprised. And maybe I'll share this idea too, and we can kind of maybe land the plane just because I think we're at an hour. So like going back to you saying, you kind of said, I just don't want to like if a I just don't want to help. I just don't want to chase these guys into helping them. If they don't want to help themselves, then I'm good. Okay. And I just want to piggyback on that for a second too, because I think what you and where I just speak for myself, where I'm at is that I only care about helping people get better. I don't care about helping you feel better. And that's a very important distinction that I've had to come to in my own coaching journey for the last 20 years, is that for a lot of years, I helped people feel better at the expense of them getting better. And at this point in my life, I don't care how you feel. I just want to make you better. I want to make you better in every domain of your life. So if you want to feel better, don't reach out to me. Don't contact me. I'm not your guy. There's a million people that will take your money and help you feel better. If you want to get better, contact me. Now, I am a very loving, caring, compassionate person. Anybody that knows me knows that about me. But what I've learned about life is that there's a giant fork in the road oftentimes that we have to choose between feeling better and being better, and that we can rarely get both at the same time. And in my the in to for me to hold on to my own integrity, to do the things that really matter to me, whenever I'm at that fork in the road, I'm only gonna point people towards the things they need to do to get better, and that often comes at the expense or the cost of them feeling better. So if you're looking for kind of a friend, someone to kind of, help you feel warm or help you feel good about yourself, I'm probably not gonna be a good match for you. But if you want to accomplish some really big things, move into an elite status, um, get your life firing on all cylinders, which in order to do that, it's like you and I have to be the doctors that give the medicine, and the medicine sucks. The medicine. I remember I was working with a health coach. I still work with him. He's an awesome guy. He's been life changing for me. We're on a call one day, and he just was like, we were talking about something. And he's like, "Hey, I just got to tell you something." I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" He's like, "You're fat, and I don't know if anyone's ever told you that." I was like, "Fuck, dude, that's brutal." right?
Fuck you first.
Yeah. But I can't tell you how much I respected him for being willing to say that. Nobody else would say that. Nobody else would dare say that because everyone is so concerned with making somebody feel better. And he didn't say it to hurt me. He said it because it was just the truth. And he needed to say the truth. And I needed to hear the truth. And so for people listening to this, this is a thing, this is a thing that we have to settle into. Do we want to hear the truth that ultimately is going to make us better, or do we want to hear the passive lies that are going to make us feel better? Because these are not the same things, and you have to understand that as you kind of are on this journey of life, and if you want to get better or if you want to feel better, you got to really understand which game you're getting into because they're not the same game.
Mic drop that. We are having this conversation because we have, over the last, 6 years, 5 years, have dug into topics just like this. I think we've gotten both more and more encouraged and excited, and at the same time, more and more frustrated by a lot of what we've seen. With us both now residing back in Orange County, we are going to do everything we can to bring as many high level, high value, elite men into community as we possibly can. So if you've gotten to the end of this video, you're listening, watching, and you're like, man, I want some of this, you're going to have to let us know, because right now this is going to go to our own independent channels. We're looking to potentially do something where we bring that together, name it, claim it, I don't know, whatever that may look like, live events in the future. We've got a lot of dream and vision for what's possible, but that requires for you to be honest with yourself, as Quentin said, being willing to say, I don't have it all figured out. I don't have it all together. I'm crushing it in a lot of areas, but I can get better. And if that's you, comment, DM us, find us somewhere. We'll make sure to put both of our contact information down into the show notes and description. But yeah, you're going to have to let us know if you want more of this.